The orbital research station Meridian cast its shadow across the emerald canopy of Viridian 7 as Dr. Sienna Cross pressed her palm against the observation deck's viewport. Below, somewhere within that vast wilderness, lived the most dangerous predator the Galactic Survey Corps had ever attempted to study. 4 years of failed protocols, millions in destroyed equipment, 3 near-fatal encounters that left seasoned researchers traumatized. Commander Joran Vex crossed his lower arms while his upper pair gestured at the holographic display. The Calvorian officer's crystalline skin refracted the amber warning lights dancing across the tactical readout. His species had mapped 17 star systems and catalogued thousands of predatory species. None had proven as resistant to study as this singular creature. Dr. Cross, your credentials are impressive for a human. Rehabilitation work with Earth's great white sharks, Siberian tigers, polar bears. However, this is not Earth. His vocal synthesizer hummed with barely concealed skepticism. The specimen designated Thornback has demonstrated cognitive abilities that border on tactical intelligence. It anticipates our drones. It recognizes surveillance patterns. Last month, it deliberately destroyed a sensor array we believed was completely camouflaged. Sienna turned from the viewport, her dark eyes meeting his multifaceted gaze without flinching. She had spent 6 months traveling through hyperspace to reach this assignment, and she refused to be dismissed before even setting foot on the planet. Commander, I read the incident reports during my journey. Every failed approach shared one common element: technology. Your teams relied on advanced equipment to maintain distance and safety. Standard protocol, interjected Dr. Quillix. The team's senior xenobiologist, the Therian scientist's tentacles undulated with agitation, their bioluminescent tips flashing yellow. We prioritize crew safety. Thornback stands 4 meters at the shoulder. Its hide deflects standard plasma charges. Its jaw strength could crush reinforced titanium. Direct approach would be suicidal. Perhaps that's exactly what it expects now. Sienna pulled up her own data slate, displaying footage she had studied obsessively during the journey. Look at this sequence from year 2. Thornback destroys the hovering drone, but watch its behavior afterward. It doesn't immediately retreat. It circles the debris, investigates. Here it touches the broken components with remarkable gentleness given its size. This isn't mindless destruction. Commander Vex leaned closer, his interest piqued despite his reservations. Your interpretation? Curiosity mixed with threat response. Thornback perceives your technology as dangerous, possibly invasive, but the creature shows restraint with biological entities. She scrolled through additional clips. These small scavengers feed near it without harassment. Flying creatures land on its back. Even the juvenile Thornbacks approach freely. It's capable of nuanced judgment about what constitutes an actual threat. Dr. Quillix's tentacles stilled, their color shifting to a thoughtful purple. You propose approaching without technological assistance. The Ethics Committee would never approve such risk. The Human Integration Accord grants Earth representatives latitude in methodology when conventional approaches fail. Sienna had memorized the relevant passages during her academy training. Humanity's recent admission to the galactic community came with certain privileges, though few researchers knew how to leverage them. 4 years qualifies as comprehensive failure of conventional methods. The silence that followed was broken by Commander Vex's low, resonant laugh. You've done your homework, Dr. Cross, very well. I'll authorize a preliminary observation phase, but you'll follow strict safety parameters, maintain communication, establish position at territorial boundaries only. Any sign of aggression and extraction is immediate. Sienna nodded, though she suspected those parameters would need adjustment once she actually encountered Thornback. Understood, Commander. I'll need 3 days to acclimate to the planet's ecosystem before beginning observations. 3 days, Vex agreed. Meanwhile, we'll brief you on everything we've learned. Feeding patterns, territorial markers, seasonal behaviors. If you're going to meet this creature on its terms, you should understand what those terms actually are. Over the following 72 hours, Sienna immersed herself in data. Thornback's territory covered approximately 50 square kilometers of dense forest and rocky outcroppings. The creature was solitary except during mating season, which had passed 4 months prior. Its diet consisted primarily of large herbivores, though it occasionally consumed certain mineral-rich plants found near volcanic vents. Most intriguing was its apparent memory. Thornback never fell for the same trick twice and seemed to recognize individual researchers, even through environmental suits. On the morning of the 4th day, Sienna stood in the shuttle bay, checking her minimal gear. No sensors, no weapons, no communication drones, just a basic med kit, water purification tablets, and a simple radio transmitter for emergency use. Her suit was standard issue, designed for environmental protection but lacking any advanced features that might register as threatening. Dr. Quillix approached, tentacles waving in a gesture Sienna had learned meant concern. "I hope you understand what you're attempting. We've lost colleagues to less dangerous worlds. I know the risks." Sienna secured her pack and headed for the shuttle. But sometimes the greatest danger lies in maintaining distance. Predators respect those who show courage without aggression. I'm betting Thornback is smart enough to recognize the difference. The shuttle descended through Viridian 7's atmosphere, breaking through cloud layers to reveal the magnificent wilderness below. As the craft settled into a clearing 3 kilometers from Thornback's last known position, Sienna took a deep breath. Somewhere in that emerald vastness, a creature waited that had defied understanding for 4 years. She intended to change that, one careful step at a time. The forest of Viridian 7 breathed with alien life. Sienna moved through the undergrowth with deliberate care, her boots finding purchase on the spongy violet moss that carpeted the forest floor. Above her, the canopy filtered the system's binary suns into dancing patterns of gold and amber light. Every sound felt magnified in the stillness. The chirping of 6-winged insects, the distant calls of arboreal creatures, the whisper of wind through leaves that resembled crystallized feathers. She had been observing for 6 days now, establishing a pattern. Each morning she would position herself at a rocky outcropping that marked the southwestern edge of Thornback's territory. She would sit motionless for hours, simply existing in the space without demands or intrusion. No recordings, no measurements, just presence. On the 7th morning, everything changed. Sienna had settled into her usual spot, her back against a boulder still warm from the previous day's heat. She was cataloging the movements of a herd of grazing animals the research team called silverbacks, when the forest suddenly went silent. Every creature, from the smallest insect to the grazing herd, simply stopped. The absence of sound was so complete that Sienna could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Then she saw it. Thornback emerged from the tree line like a shadow given form. The creature was even more magnificent than the surveillance footage had suggested. Its body was covered in overlapping plates of what appeared to be organic armor, each segment shifting through shades of deep green and brown as it moved. 6 powerful legs carried its massive frame with surprising grace. The head was wedge-shaped, dominated by 4 eyes arranged in a pattern that gave it nearly 360-degree vision. When it opened its mouth slightly, Sienna glimpsed rows of teeth designed to tear through the toughest hide. Her training screamed at her to run, to call for extraction, to do anything except remain frozen in place. But Sienna had studied enough apex predators to know that flight would trigger pursuit. Instead, she controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate through meditation techniques, and kept her gaze lowered in a gesture of non-confrontation. Thornback stopped approximately 80 meters away, its 4 eyes fixed on her with unsettling intelligence. The creature tilted its head, processing this anomaly in its territory. A human. Alone. Unprotected by the buzzing machines it had come to associate with intrusion. Sienna could almost see the calculation happening behind those alien eyes. Minutes stretched like hours. Sienna remained perfectly still, her muscles beginning to ache from the sustained position. Thornback took 3 steps closer, then stopped again. Its nostrils flared, sampling her scent. Another step. Then another. The distance between them had closed to 50 meters when Sienna noticed something that made her breath catch. Thornback was limping. The injury wasn't immediately obvious, hidden as it was beneath the creature's natural armor. But now that Sienna was looking for it, she could see the subtle favor of its rear left leg, the way it avoided putting full weight on that limb. When Thornback shifted position, she caught a glimpse of discolored tissue near the joint, swollen and angry-looking. The creature had been injured, and from the appearance, the wound was infected. Suddenly, the 4 years of aggressive behavior made terrible sense. Thornback wasn't acting out of pure territorial instinct. It was in pain, and every buzzing drone, every hovering sensor, every approaching researcher registered as a potential threat to a vulnerable predator. In the wild, weakness meant death. Thornback had been defending itself the only way it knew how. Sienna's mind raced. She had basic medical supplies, antibiotics that worked across a broad spectrum of carbon-based life forms, wound sealant that the Galactic Medical Corps had perfected over centuries. But getting close enough to treat that injury would require something no amount of technology could provide. It would require trust. "Easy there," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I can see you're hurting. I want to help." Thornback's head snapped toward her at the sound. The creature's body language shifted, muscles tensing as if preparing to charge. Sienna forced herself to remain calm, to project peaceful intent through every line of her body. She had done this before with injured great whites, with territorial tigers, with frightened elephants. The species changed, but the fundamental principle remained the same. Show no fear, but offer no challenge. Slowly, incrementally, Sienna moved her hand to her medical kit. The motion was glacial, telegraphed clearly so Thornback could track every movement. Her fingers found the kit seal and opened it with a soft click that sounded like thunder in the quiet forest. She withdrew a container of broad-spectrum antibiotics and held it up, letting Thornback see it clearly. "This can help," she said softly. "I know you don't understand my words, but maybe you can understand my intent." Thornback watched with those 4 unblinking eyes. The creature took another step forward, now only 30 meters away. Close enough that Sienna could see the intricate patterns in its armor plating, the way its breath created small clouds in the cool morning air, the intelligence burning in its gaze. Then something remarkable happened. Thornback lowered itself to the ground, its injured leg extending slightly as if presenting the wound for inspection. The gesture was so deliberate, so clearly communicative that Sienna felt tears prick her eyes. This magnificent creature, this apex predator that had terrified trained researchers for 4 years, was asking for help. Sienna stood slowly, her movements careful and measured. She took 1 step forward. Thornback remained still. Another step. The creature's eyes tracked her progress but showed no aggression. With each step, Sienna spoke in a low, soothing voice, the same tone she had used with countless injured animals throughout her career. "That's it. I'm going to come closer now. I'm going to look at your leg. I promise I won't hurt you. 20 meters, 15, 10. The distance closed until Sienna stood just 5 meters from the most dangerous predator on Viridian 7. This close. Thornback was even more imposing, its shoulder easily reaching above Sienna's head even in its prone position. She could smell the creature now, a scent like copper and earth and something uniquely alien. Sienna knelt slowly and opened her medical kit fully. The wound was worse than she had initially thought. A deep laceration, probably from a territorial dispute with another large predator, had become severely infected. Left untreated, it would likely prove fatal within weeks. "This is going to sting," she warned, though she knew Thornback couldn't understand her words. Perhaps it was the tone, or perhaps the creature simply understood on some instinctive level, but Thornback remained perfectly still as Sienna began to clean the wound. The creature's muscles quivered under her touch, but it made no move to strike. As Sienna worked, applying antibiotic gel and carefully sealing the worst of the damage, she felt a profound connection forming. This was why she had traveled across the galaxy. Not for academic glory or research citations, but for moments like this. Moments where understanding bridged the gap between species, where compassion transcended the barriers of language and evolution. Above them, unseen by either, Commander Vex watched through the high-altitude drone, his crystalline features frozen in disbelief at what he was witnessing. The binary suns of Viridian 7 climbed higher in the sky as Sienna completed her treatment of Thornback's wound. Her hands moved with practiced precision, applying the final layer of regenerative gel that would accelerate healing and prevent further infection. The creature remained motionless throughout, though occasional tremors ran through its massive frame when Sienna touched particularly sensitive areas. "There," she said softly, securing the last of the bioadhesive bandaging. "Give it 3 days and you should feel significantly better. The swelling will go down and the infection will clear." Thornback's 4 eyes had been watching her work with intense focus. Now, as she sat back on her heels and began packing away her medical supplies, the creature did something that would become the most analyzed footage in xenobiological history. It extended its massive head forward and gently pressed its snout against Sienna's shoulder. The gesture lasted only seconds, but the meaning was unmistakable. Gratitude, recognition, trust. Sienna felt her throat tighten with emotion. She raised her hand slowly and placed it on the armored plates of Thornback's head. The creature's body temperature was warmer than she expected, and she could feel the subtle vibration of its breathing beneath her palm. "You're welcome, friend. You're very welcome." The moment stretched between them, a connection forming that transcended species boundaries. Then Thornback pulled back, rising to its full height with considerably more ease than it had shown in days. The creature regarded Sienna for a long moment before turning and disappearing into the forest, with surprising silence for something so massive. Sienna sat alone in the clearing, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. Her communicator crackled to life, Commander Vex's voice tight with barely contained astonishment. "Dr. Cross, return to the extraction point immediately. We need a full debriefing." The shuttle ride back to the Meridian felt surreal. Sienna stared out the viewport at the receding forest, replaying every moment of the encounter. She had approached the mission expecting to make observations, perhaps establish the groundwork for future contact. Instead, she had achieved in 7 days what 4 years of advanced technology had failed to accomplish. The debriefing room was packed when she arrived. Commander Vex stood at the center, surrounded by Dr. Quillix and at least a dozen other senior researchers. The holographic display showed multiple angles of her encounter with Thornback. Frozen at the moment, the creature had pressed its head against her shoulder. "Explain," Vex said simply, his crystalline form refracting the light in patterns that indicated deep contemplation. "Explain how you achieved what we could not." Sienna moved to the display and gestured at the footage. "You were approaching this wrong from the beginning. You treated Thornback as a research subject to be studied from a distance, controlled through superior technology. But Thornback isn't just intelligent. It's emotionally complex. It was injured in pain, and every approach you made registered as a threat to a vulnerable predator." She zoomed in on the image of Thornback's infected wound. "Look at the timeline. This injury occurred approximately 4 years ago, based on the scarring patterns, right around the time your team first established orbit. Thornback's aggression wasn't territorial instinct. It was fear-based defensive behavior from a creature that associated your presence with its vulnerability." Dr. Quillix's tentacles shifted to a deep blue, a color Sienna had learned indicated profound realization. "We never considered that the aggression might be rooted in physical distress. We assumed it was simply the nature of an apex predator. Apex predators are often the most cautious creatures in an ecosystem," Sienna explained. "They have no natural enemies, which means any injury can be catastrophic. Thornback couldn't afford to show weakness, so it drove away anything that might exploit that weakness, including you." Commander Vex manipulated the display, showing Sienna's approach in slow motion. "But why did it allow you close? What made you different?" Sienna considered her answer carefully. "I came without the trappings of threat. No drones, no sensors, no weapons. I sat at the edge of its territory for days, making no demands, showing no aggression. I was simply present, and when I finally encountered Thornback, I recognized the signs of injury immediately. My body language, my tone. Everything communicated that I wasn't a threat. I was offering help." "The creature understood your intent," Vex said slowly. "Despite having no prior experience with humans, no common frame of reference, it somehow recognized that you meant to help." "Intelligence isn't unique to any single form," Sienna replied. "Thornback has been surviving in this ecosystem through a combination of physical prowess and cognitive ability. It reads situations, makes judgments, learns from experience. When I approached without the technology it had learned to fear, I became something new in its experience, an unknown variable. And when I focused on its injury rather than trying to get close to study it, Thornback made a choice. It chose to trust." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Quillix was the first to speak, tentacles now shifting to an excited yellow. "This changes everything. If Thornback is capable of that level of cross-species communication, the potential for future study is extraordinary." "No," Sienna said firmly, surprising herself with the force of her response. "That's not what this means. Thornback didn't grant access for your research. It accepted help because it was in pain. There's a difference." Commander Vex's expression was unreadable. "You're suggesting we terminate the study?" "I'm suggesting we redefine it." Sienna pulled up a new set of data on her personal slate. "Over the next few days, I'd like to return to monitor Thornback's recovery. Not to collect samples or run tests, but to ensure the treatment is effective. If we're fortunate, Thornback may allow additional contact. But it has to be on the creature's terms, not ours. The debate that followed lasted 3 hours. Some researchers argued for aggressive follow-up, wanting to capitalize on the breakthrough. Others supported Sienna's more measured approach. In the end, Commander Vex made the decision. Dr. Cross will return to the surface for 5 days with minimal equipment. Dr. Quelix will observe from high altitude only. No drones, no close-range sensors. We document what Thornback chooses to share, nothing more. Over the following days, Sienna returned to the forest clearing. Thornback appeared each morning, allowing her to check the healing wound. The infection cleared rapidly and the creature's mobility improved dramatically. But something else was happening too. Thornback began bringing her things. A cluster of the mineral-rich plants it occasionally ate. A strange crystalline formation from deeper in its territory. Small offerings that spoke of a developing relationship. On the final day, as Sienna prepared to return to the Meridian, Thornback arrived with something different. 3 juvenile Thornbacks followed behind the adult, their smaller forms still bearing the spotted patterns of youth. The message was clear. This human had proven trustworthy. The next generation could learn that not all beings were threats. Sienna watched as the juveniles approached cautiously, their curiosity overcoming their natural wariness. She remained still, letting them investigate her on their own terms. One of the young ones pressed its snout against her hand, mimicking the gesture its parent had made days earlier. Commander Vex's voice came through her communicator, filled with an emotion Sienna had never heard from the Kelvorian officer. Dr. Cross, I owe you an apology. We spent 4 years trying to control and study Thornback. You spent 7 days trying to understand it. The difference in approach yielded the difference in results. Sienna smiled as the juvenile Thornbacks played around her, their parent watching with what she could only describe as contentment. Respect isn't given through dominance or superior technology, Commander. It's earned through compassion, patience, and the willingness to see another being as deserving of dignity. Thornback didn't need to be controlled. It needed to be understood. As the shuttle carried her back to orbit for the final time, Sienna looked down at the forest where a wounded predator had chosen to trust a human stranger. The research team would publish their findings. Other missions would benefit from the lessons learned. But for Sienna, the real victory was simpler and more profound. Sometimes the greatest discoveries came not from technological advancement, but from the oldest wisdom humanity possessed. The knowledge that healing begins with compassion, that trust must be offered before it can be received, and that even the most fearsome creature responds to kindness when it's offered without expectation or demand. Thornback had chosen her not because she was human, but because she had chosen to see the pain beneath the predator, the vulnerability beneath the armor, the need beneath the aggression. In the end, that made all the difference.